So, greetings, hello, Dr. Thomas Daffern here. My weekly fasting Sunday talk become a bit of a ritual for me, this weekly fast, which I began to oppose Brexit and all that it stood for, and now it's been compounded. It's a sort of weekly fast against violence, conflict and lies in the world, which is, quite a lot to take on, but then hey. I always used to identify with the Norse legend of Thor. I think Thor was one of my favourite archetypes as a boy. When he was tricked into the drinking horn by Loki, and Loki challenged him to a drinking contest, and he just had to drain the horn. And so, he took a swig, and my God, there's a lot here, and he took a bit more. And he glugged, and it took like 20 minutes for the horn to go down just that much. And eventually it turned out that Loki had tricked him because the horn was connected to the seas. And what Thor had done is just like reduce the sea level all over the world by that much. I remember that, reading it in a Puffin book as a child, in the Sagas of Asgard, it was called. Great book. I used to read these little stories at night, and that metaphor, like my weekly fast against Brexit, it turns out that it's connected to lying in politics, it's connected to the role of plutocrats and dishonest capitalists, and it's connected to the military capitalism, it's connected to neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism, it's connected to the nuclear arms movement, those in favour of that, etc., etc. So what I thought was just like a weekly little fast against Brexit turns out to be Thor drinking the horn. So all I can say is thanks, Loki, cheers, But I'm going to keep going till we solve this problem. So I've got some exciting things to share, I hope. And what we have first is, recently, we've had this wonderful Midsummer Solstice. I love this time of year. It's like maximum light here in the Northern Hemisphere. Sorry about the fact that it's dark in the Southern Hemisphere, but hey, that's life. Libra, balance. So we had a great Summer Solstice Festival online. Again, because we're all in lockdown, it's Zoom time. And some wonderful speakers spoke. Again, you can listen to it online. It was, I did only a 12-hour one this year, and some great highlights of that sequence are all on the Zoom Festival. It was nice to see Rob Chapman, my old Druid friend from Obod days, when I lived in the Welsh Marches, speaking honestly about, Druidry and magic and healing and therapy and all that stuff. It was great to see Arbla, who is a spiritual healer in Nottingham that I haven't met for years. When I taught in Nottinghamshire schools for 2 years, I was head of humanities and religious studies in a school in Sherwood Forest. Guess why I was attracted to that job. And anyway, Arbla's an amazing woman. She's Egyptian, a Sufi, a magical person. And then we were joined by a druidess connected to Avebury from Sussex, who, it was wonderful to listen in to their conversation. Two elder women talking about, both of them are spiritual healers. So I was like asking interesting questions. And we ended up talking about planetary healing and how we can get rid of the demons that are affecting our planet. Is there a kind of, a demonic takeover attempt going on? And if so, what do we do about it? It's a very interesting early morning conversation, worth listening to, I think. And then I also heard in the morning from Peter Marshall, who is an amazing intellectual. He's written loads of books. He's a specialist in the history of politics. He did a PhD at the University of Sussex, where my mother taught. When I was growing up as a little boy, Peter was doing his PhD there on William Godwin, the great philosopher, whose daughter married Shelley, and he was married to Mary Wollstonecraft. Anyway, Peter's gone on, and he's a real savant. And that was a priceless interview, I think. We ended up talking about everything from Hermeticism to Zosimus and alchemy and God knows what. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Peter. And then I've had interviews with Bharti Jain of India, who talks about her amazing healing technique she's developed as a Jain. And most recently with a Scottish independence worker and savant perpetual student, Morag Fairley, who, again, you can listen to all these interviews. So that was, and there are others. Thank you to everyone that took part, and to all the people that are part of that Solstice Festival celebration, and homage to King Arthur and Rollo, who were there, I think, at the Heelstone, at the Stones. It was all shut down because of, COVID. But Arthur points out rightly that, well, hang on, the toffs can have their Ascot type things, and yet the poor people can't have their Stonehenge thing. There's a bit of a class bias going on in British society. Yeah, well spotted, Arthur. So awesome times we're living through. Now I want to mention a very important event that took place. We had the G7 in a Druid stronghold, Cornwall, which I know and love. I know Penwith and St Just and the Cornish Druids, and I don't think Boris Johnson, has the faintest clue about honour or integrity. I mean, he shouldn't be a prime minister. He's not fit to be. There's something gravely wrong with our constitution in Britain, that liars like that, chancellors, can get to positions of power. It's disgraceful and embarrassing that he should be representing my beautiful, glorious country, which is a wise and wonderful country, and there has no business with people like that. Sorry, let me just switch this off. And I believe he'll be gone soon. We've just lost one of his acolytes. I'll come back to that later. But what I want to say is that what was interesting was not only the event and Biden's presence and Merkel and Macron and the others being a sort of solid, decent people. Biden is a solid, decent person, in my opinion. But also the then summit between Biden and Putin. I think that's a very important bit of modern history. At least they're talking, and they can speak the same language. They're both consummate diplomats, Biden and Putin, and intelligent people. And it was very interesting. I listened to the press conference that both Biden and Putin gave after their meeting, which was obviously in secret. Putin's discussion was fascinating. He was asked many penetrating questions by an NBC reporter who was, I have to say, I don't know why the American journalists are so aggressive and so ill-mannered. I mean, he was rude again and again and again. But Putin is a sophisticated guy and just laughed it off. I mean, why do American journalists think it's correct and right to be rude to heads of state? They weren't rude to people like the head of the Saudi Arabian government, MBS, who chops people up. They seem to be rude with the wrong people, Anyway, one of the questions, and it's worth watching the whole interview if you have time, it's on YouTube. Biden was asked the following question by this rude reporter from NBC, who said, Mr. Putin, I hear that, this person was found dead, that person was found dead, this person was found poisoned with polonium, this person was found killed. I mean, all the traces go back to you. I mean, are you a killer, Mr. Putin? I mean, what a question to ask of a head of state. I mean, it's just... Anyway, the way he dealt with it was brilliant. He said, well, no, but I do find the question interesting. So it seems to me that you've been watching too many gangster movies. In your culture in America, people are called killers, and it's a dumb thing. You go around shooting each other, and there's street crime and violence, all the time, and you kind of call people killers, because you're used to that. It's the way you think. I have to say that in Russia, it's not how we think. we live in an ordered society now, thank God. You know, the days of extremism are behind us, and we have a thing called the rule of law. And all the cases that you mentioned, you know, they were all being investigated. Most of them, we haven't got a clue what was behind it. And we will help as much as possible to identify who was responsible. And I think the trouble is that in your society you have this sort of glorification of killing. And therefore you project it onto other people, and you project it onto me as Russian leader, as if, you know, as if I'm some kind of Wild West gangster. I think what you need to do is look at yourselves as a culture and ask, maybe are we killers? You know, why is there so much violence in our society? Anyway, words to that effect. I mean, he gave a very sophisticated answer. I think it was probably over the head of the interviewer, because he asked then another rude question. So it was sort of rude question after rude question. But it's worth watching and very interesting. And I think one of the most important things that Putin said in his own press conference, which he gave after the meeting with Biden, is he mentioned the fact that he had raised again with Biden the question of a cyber peace treaty. You see, the modern world, now we have online wars going on, cyber hacking, and we have teams of specialist sort of cyber computer hackers in different countries around the world trying to hack into other countries and you know, destabilize them. And we know that things like the Stuxnet worm and so on, they came from Israel, America. You know, these are facts. And so it's silly, you know, this is silly behavior. This is kids in the playground. I feel like a planetary teacher. You know, I'm Vice President of Philosopher Peace internationally. I have a duty to speak out. This is wrong. This is stupid. I'm like the teacher in the playground blowing the whistle, because there's gangs all beating each other up and doing cyberbullying in effect. So the only solution to this is to have a cyber peace treaty. Now, you may or may not know that as coordinator of the World Intellectual Forum in Europe, in 2017 I drafted a call for a cyber peace treaty, and I sent it, and it was signed by philosophers in Russia, America, Europe, Britain, all over the place, India. And it went to some very senior Russian intellectuals who, and it may have ended up in the Foreign Ministry's office, Lavrov, because later that year Lavrov raised the question of a cyber peace treaty, exactly as we'd said in our document, at the UN Security Council. Good on Lavrov, you know, he's a clever man. He knows that the new frontier of warfare is in the cybersphere. And bless him, Putin raised exactly the same point with Biden. He said, he reported back in his press conference that he'd raised the issue. And there was discussion of it. And he pointed out the following very interesting statistics. So, you know, the media is full of the fact that Russia keeps hacking American cybersecurity, and Russia's the big bad wolf here. Apparently, America has issued 2 formal complaints and questions to the Russian state about cyber hacking. And they've twice called out Russia and said, look, you guys seem to have hacked our whatever it was. And here's the trace, we've traced it back to Russia. Please tell us what on earth's going on. How dare you do this? This is an assault on our integrity as a nation. And Putin said, we've had 2 complaints and we've replied to them both. We've given the details of what we know, and we've assisted them with their inquiries. He then said that Russia has issued 43 complaints to the USA officially. This is under Trump's watch. What we call the time of darkness, Jahiliya. And on 43 separate occasions, the Americans seem to have been trying to hack into Russian installations, information systems, whatever. And they complained officially to the US 43 times, and they haven't had a single acknowledgement back from the US. They haven't once had any kind of like, yes, we did it, no, we didn't, we'll help you investigate, we're sorry, no, it wasn't us. Nothing, just silence. I think that tells you all you need to know about about the proportionality of the way the media cover this stuff. You know, has the Western media ever said anything like that? Does the Western media show due proportionality and balance and objectivity in its reporting? I don't think so. So that was, I think, very interesting. And, I took some pride in thinking that our group of World Intellectual Forum had done some little bit in hastening this conversation. What I would add is that online interference in other people's cultures is not only about hacking. I think the Cyber Peace Treaty has to also include clauses about disinformation and what is effectively the attempt to destroy the morale of a nation by hacking into their social media and spreading disinformation and lies. Cambridge Analytica invented that. They used it, psychological warfare, to destroy the UK's friendly relations with Europe. And they succeeded. They persuaded enough of the kind of unintellectual people to vote for Brexit, which is like, voting to chop your arm off. Because they presented it in such a way that was targeted, memed, focused in a way that would appeal to the worst xenophobic kind of instincts of ordinary Joe public. And that was a very sophisticated psyops warfare technique. And Nigel Nix, the guy that perfected that and ran Cambridge Analytica, who employed Chris Wiley to devise the systems that worked it, has been done for fraud and criminal activity. He's banned from working for any company for years and years to come. I mean, he should be in jail. And Dominic Cummings, who employed Cambridge Analytica and worked with them, he should be in jail too. I mean, I think he's had a bit of a late conversion experience, realised there is such a thing as ethics, and that he is accountable for his actions. He reminds me of an adolescent boy that's finally got the importance of RE lessons, and having boycotted them for years is kind of turning up reluctantly. Well done, Dominic. Keep working on it, mate. Keep the conscience cells powering up. So yes, I think the Cyber Peace Treaty needs to be written, needs to be drafted by top lawyers, needs to be drafted by international legal experts, and it must include like non propagandistic hacking into each other's social media. I mean, I belong both to Facebook, but also to the Russian equivalent of VK. And, no doubt everyone's trying to hack everyone else, but that's got to stop, guys. We're not going to build a peaceful world if everyone's telling lies and spreading memes and so on. I know for a fact, and I attended a very interesting high-level conference with the Harvard University Center for Intelligence Studies as an academic, that Biden has issued a call for his intelligence agencies to focus on genuine planetary threats like global warming, sea level rising, drought, floods, big stuff that can threaten the whole of humanity. That's what our intelligence services should be doing, not sort of hacking and spreading anti-Russian propaganda or anti-Chinese or anti-anybody. We need to all work on this together. That is Biden's position, and it's also mine as a scholar and philosopher of peace. So anyway, listen to that interview with Putin. Listen to the press conference done by Biden and by Putin after their summit. I hope something comes out of it, and I hope they get this Cyber Peace Treaty written up. I'm on standby to help if they want advice from a philosopher. Very happy to help, because like all technologies, the internet's a wonderful tool. It's how I can communicate with you now, but these things can be misused. It's like when gunpowder was invented. You can either have it for beautiful fireworks and helping make tunnels and stuff, or you can blow to smithereens people you don't like. Well, let's use this technology of the internet for good. Let's use it for spreading truth, love, cooperation, and historical fact. As a scholar of history and philosophy, that's what I want the internet for. And that's why Tim Berners-Lee, my great compatriot who helped devise it, also wanted it. Right, I want to move on and talk about the International Commission for the Inquiry into the Etiology of COVID. ICI-AOC is its acronym. this is an ongoing project. It's a commission set up by my Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy, which in turn was set up at the University of London, and in association with the World Intellectual Forum. And I'm determined. I've been talking about this for months, in fact, for like a long time, during the whole of lockdown, saying that we need a proper investigation. What I realised in the last month is that, well, for reasons inexplicable to man, the powers that be aren't doing it. I've written to this, that and the other authority and said, set up an investigation. And you just get silence. So I've decided, well, okay, if not now, who? If not now, when? So I've set it up. I suppose philosophers are appropriate to do this kind of work. I mean, Bertrand Russell set up a commission at the time of the Vietnam War into war crimes and so on. I mean, he was a philosopher for peace, like me. And Sartre ran also a similar commission about the Algerian War. That's what intellectuals are for. My job is to be neutral, objective, impartial, and fair, and investigate as thoroughly and forensically as possible. There are so many theories floating about the origins of COVID-19. There's the mainstream story that we were told in the beginning, that it was an accident of mutation, came from coronaviruses in a cave, from bats, somehow it leaped to animals, somehow it got into the food chain and was consumed by humans, and that's why suddenly everyone went sick in Wuhan. Well, actually there's no evidence that any of that is true. When the WHO Commission went in, they didn't find that trail. And now research has come out, published in peer-reviewed science journal, that actually that story doesn't look very credible, because apparently, according to this latest research last week, the virus itself is, they made a computer model of the virus, right? And then they tested how good it is at latching on to all these different animals, like bats, pangolins, you name it, and humans. And they made models of this was done by an Australian university, I think La Trobe, team of real experts. And they discovered, lo and behold, it's useless at latching on to bats, pangolins, and all the rest of it. But it's brilliant at latching on to humans, like seriously brilliant, which is why it's so lethal. And therefore it looks like this thing was designed right from the beginning to latch onto humans. I mean, and it can't have leapt through the animal chain to do that. No, it looks like it was designed from day one to do the humans. Now that's peer-reviewed scientific research that's just come out last week. My job as commission chair is to investigate all this stuff. I've written to 50 of the world's leading virologists, epidemiologists, and medical doctors, and asking them their views on the etiology of this illness. I used to work in medicine. I have a, profound interest in healing, the healing arts, and in medicine. And I've been to Kos, I've sat in the temple where Hippocrates founded the Asclepian, that he used to run there for healing. I think healing is partly a human intellectual work based on empirical observation, but I do think, like Hippocrates, there's a divine element. I'm not so impious that I won't allow, the god of healing, Apollo, and Hygeia and Asclepius, his son, and all, some role in this mystery called healing. The greatest doctors have also been, not so arrogant as to deny the spiritual dimensions of healing. And whatever label we want to put on that, Christian doctors will say it's the work of God, Christian God. Muslim doctors will say healing is also partly the work of Allah. Hindu doctors will say it's the Hindu gods doing the healing. All the vocabulary can be different, but the fundamental is that healing is also spiritual work. So, how can we get the healing of the planet? That's my primary concern and why I've set up this commission. You see, you can't really heal something until you know its etiology, its cause, its scientific origin. And as yet, that's unknown. So I'll be pursuing that, and anyone that has factual information, evidence, you've read reports on the internet, you've seen scientific articles, you've heard Dr. this or Dr. that talking about it, please forward it to me. My email address is pretty public. in the meantime, my duty is to preserve what's called epoche, which is the Greek term for suspension of judgment, which was a concept from Pyrrho of Elis, which was borrowed from the Jains. When he went to India, he met these gymnosophists, great Jain philosophers, who taught him what they call anikantavada, which means suspension of judgment because truth is many-sided. And so we should suspend judgment. And that's my duty as a philosopher in that skeptical tradition in the technical sense, to uphold epoche. Right, and then we come to the next point I want to mention, which is the work of the World Intellectual Forum, which I've got the duty of chairing here in Europe. We've just had a very interesting meeting online, sort of business meeting and discussions, which is an annual thing. But the actual World Intellectual Forum meets monthly on Zoom on the 30th of the month. And we've had some really fascinating discussions. Thank you to all who come. If you want to be invited, either to speak or just observe, you can email me. Why is intellect important? Why are intellectuals important? Well, I think at this time, we need them more than ever. We need people of calm, reasoned, objective disposition who will look at the problems the world's facing collectively, not sort of immediately jump into let's start a war and let's start campaigning, it's all their fault. Not the blame game, but the discussion, the dialectic. Let's talk to the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, the Europeans, the Africans, the Americans. Let's have the great thinkers of the planet gather and discuss calmly and reasonably the solutions to the problems of the world, including COVID, how we got into this, how we get out of it, including the deficit of political truth-telling. We have a tsunami of truth distortion and truth manipulation, which is why we need this cyber peace treaty. And we need to get talks going between Iran, a noble ancient wisdom culture, and all the other countries of the Middle East, including Israel, not just demonizing Iran or any other country, but collectively sharing our wisdom. And there are great intellectuals in Iran, on a par with any other culture, just as there are in Israel and in Palestine and Europe and America and so on. So my job is to try and bring them all together for discourse, to find out what is truth. And we're having another meeting on the 30th of June. You're welcome to attend. One of the other projects we've been doing, which I think is quite important, again, it's an Institute of Peace Studies / World Intellectual Forum initiative, is to set up this thing called ICEPS, International Commission for the Establishment of a Palestinian State. This arose because, way back in 2008, I set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. Some of my friends and students know that. I've travelled there, interviewed people. I've been, trying to get truth and reconciliation, but the latest round of fighting over Gaza, this ritual, perpetual asymmetry that happens. Gaza has nothing hardly. They have a few rockets that, yes, can do some damage, but they're not that much because they're not targetable. They don't have the equipment. And it's a sort of it's gesture politics. And in this last round, it killed tragically about 10 Israelis, and caused lots of damage and all that. And it's terrible. It shouldn't be happening, of course. But then if you push a bear into a cave, if you block it off, what does it do? It growls. It's human nature. Meanwhile, the Israelis have this highly sophisticated equipment paid for by the USA, which can strike and destroy anything, any target they want anywhere in Gaza. And they ritually do this every now and then, every few years. And they bombed all kinds of places. They bombed many homes, many schools, media targets and all the rest of it. And 250 people died. They're sitting ducks, right? And a lot of them were children and women. And the thing is deplorable. Anyone with a compassionate heart has to realise this has to stop. It just can't go on. So I've done some thinking, I've done some deep soul searching. I listened to the UN Security Council during the Gaza bombing, and I heard every single foreign minister from every country in the world listening to them, one after the other, was saying, we absolutely support a two-state solution. This is wrong. This has to stop. And even the USA said that, and even the UK said that. Every other state said that. The only one that didn't say it was Israel, of course. They say, no, we don't want that. So hang on. Israel's holding the whole world to ransom because they don't want a two-state solution. Every other country in the UN, like 250 or whatever, want one, but Israel says no, so that's it. No Palestinian state. Well, that seems to be how Netanyahu and his right-wing cronies have been thinking. And they've been brainwashing normal Israelis, good, decent Israelis, who used to be kind of left of centre, to thinking that's normal behaviour. I mean, the Israeli media seems to have just taken the Kool-Aid. I mean, that's not normal behaviour. They ought to know more than any other nation on earth what it's like to be persecuted and targeted and silenced and manipulated and so on. So, we need a great leap of soul by the Israeli public to realise they have to let the Palestinians have their state. I mean, the irony is it's very similar to Moses saying, please let my people go, give them, independence, O Pharaoh. And Pharaoh kept saying, no, you can't have it, no, no, no. And then finally, after the plagues and God knows what, Pharaoh says, okay, go on then. Well, that's kind of what's happening, only this time Netanyahu's like the Pharaoh and the Palestinians are like the poor refugees that are trying to get their own little country going. And it is interesting in my work on the Quran that Moses absolutely definitely was an archetype that really powerfully influenced Muhammad. So much so that he also saw his assistant Ali as Aaron, who helped him with the Exodus. So in a sense, the roles are reversed. Israel is now Pharaoh, the brutal power, and the Palestinians are like the children of Israel fleeing and trying to find peace and a promised land. I'll come back to that point in a minute. The point I'm saying, ICEPS, again, my job is to chair it totally neutrally, but by neutral I don't mean like indifferent. It's hard to find the right word in English because neutral means, well, I don't really care, you can do what you want. No, I'm passionately committed to both Israel and Palestine. I want a two-state solution like every other country on earth. And that means, logically, there has to be a Palestinian state. We can never have a two-state solution till a Palestinian state is created. Because at the moment there's an Israeli state, there's a sort of half a Palestinian one. There's the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which has representation around the world as the Palestinian state. We have a very articulate new representative in London who's been a lot on the media, great guy. We have Afif Safia, who used to have that role. He's now doing, still on the governing council of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And many great intellectuals who are Palestinian are supporting this Palestinian state. We then have the Palestinian Authority, which was set up under the Oslo Agreement, and that too is functioning, but it only has like a proportion of the territory that actually is what the Palestinian state is entitled to, because the Israelis have been chipping away at it, creating a sort of Bantustan, putting in settlements, building roads, putting in checkpoints, so that, it's like, it's not a proper functioning Palestinian state, and there's no connection between Gaza and the West Bank. So anyway, the ICEPS project is to transform the present situation of like half a Palestinian state into a full one. And I will work with any scholars, any theologians, any intellectuals, any politicians, any metaphysicians, I think it's to be done non-violently. I won't work with anyone that thinks bombing or terrorism or anything like that is going to